Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. Welcome to the online platform Civil Techno Bricks. Guys, here we will tune for the instantaneous decoding of conceptual knowledge in the field of civil engineering, where study elaborates decoding the earth to build a better world. Guys, today we will go through the core concepts related to the interaction of electromagnetic radiation with reference to atmosphere and earth surface along with the types of scattering. Here the electromagnetic radiation that are EMR, which travels from sun, that is the source of energy, to the earth surface, sun source of energy to the earth surface, where it interacts continuously with atmospheric constituents before reaching to the remote sensing sensors. Here in the atmosphere there are atmospheric gases, aerosols, dust particles and water vapor is present, which modifies the intensity and direction of incoming radiation, just like this. Okay, then these interactions mainly occur through scattering, absorption and transmission process, where the influence of the quality of remotely sensed imagery may change or may update. Likewise, we see the terrain element where the sources are incident, that is with reference to the incident radiation E, and that are reflected energy. Along with that, there are so many atmospheric gases, particles are there, with reference to that the whole rays are get disturbed and reflected with reference to that atmospheric air layer only, not coming towards earth surface. So here L total means total spectral radiance reflectance of object, we can say that the rho. Et for E is the irradiance, T is for transmission and LP is for path radiance. Here these interactions mainly occur through scattering, absorption and transmission. For that purpose the formula is prepared with reference to that scattering, absorption and transmission process and influence the quality of remotely sensed imagery. With reference to the engineering or civil engineering point of view, we have to understand the atmospheric effects, which is most important to obtain the accurate satellite data, which is more useful for land use planning and infrastructural monitoring purposes. Most important, that is the scattering, where atmospheric scattering, the diffusion of energy, most important thing, where the scattering type is determined by the ratio of particle size with reference to the wavelength. So scattering is the process by which electromagnetic radiation is in different directions redirected in the different directions after striking atmospheric particles, just shown in here, here and here. Likewise, the amount of scattering depends on the particle size, wavelength of radiation and atmospheric conditions. So here the types are Rayleigh scattering, Mie scattering and non-selective scattering. So scattered radiation reduces image contrast and may introduce noise in satellite observations. Likewise, that civil engineers consider the scattering effect while interpreting or understanding or analyzing the images, which are used for urban mapping, watershed analysis and transportation planning point of view. So here particle size is much lower than wavelength. Particle size is near about equal to wavelength and particle size is greater than wavelength. Likewise, which affects gas molecule and causes blue skies and haze, that is the Rayleigh scattering, where the Mie scattering is affects smoke, dust, pollen grains, where forwarded scattering lobes are seen, and in non-selective scattering, which affects water droplets, or we can say that the clouds, which scatters all visible light equally, that is in white. That is the Rayleigh scattering, which is also known as a molecular scattering. It occurs when particle size is much smaller than wavelength, for example nitrogen, oxygen type of gases. The scattering intensity is inversely proportional to the fourth power of the wavelength, that is I is inversely proportional to lambda raised to 4. Means that Rayleigh scattering occurs when atmospheric particles are much smaller, where it affects shorter wavelengths such as blue and violet light, causing the sky to appear blue. Means the intensity of Rayleigh scattering is inversely proportional to the fourth power of wavelength. With reference to that remote sensing concept, the excessive Rayleigh scattering can decrease the image quality or clarity, and it affect extraction and engineering features also. So the consequences related to the blue light that is having 0.4 micrometer, which scatters 16 times more than near infrared region, which having the visible spectrum that is 0.8 micrometer. With reference to the graphical representation, we see that the wavelength that is 0.4 micrometer to 0.7 micrometer on x-axis. On other hand, y-axis relative scattering intensity. So two colors are there, blue color and red color. So we can see the red color which having the relative scattering intensity is too small, but the wavelength is maximum. Likewise, for blue color, relative scattering intensity is too much high, but the wavelength is minimum. Likewise, we check the Rayleigh scattering. Second one will be the Mie scattering, which is also called as the aerosol scattering. Here the Rayleigh scattering is likewise, but the Mie scattering is likewise. So here the difference with reference to the diagram point of view, we see that in Rayleigh scattering, one ray of incident energy and other are reflected from one end. At the other hand, all energy is emitted. Here in Mie scattering, energy incident and energy reflected at the same time, but after that the forwarded scattering effect is seen in Mie scattering. That is, Mie scattering occurs when particle sizes are nearly equal to the wavelength of electromagnetic radiations. So where it occurs when particle size is equal to the wavelength point of view. So the dust particles, smoke, pollen, grains and water droplets are all the common causes of this type of scattering. Where the Rayleigh scattering, Mie scattering influences both visible and infrared regions of the spectrum that affects longer wavelengths than Rayleigh scattering. With reference to the civil engineering point of view, we see and we have to consider that Mie scattering when using satellite images for air quality assessment and urban environmental studies. Then non-selective scattering, third part. The non-selective scattering occurs when atmospheric particles are much larger than the wavelength of the incoming radiation, just like particle size is greater than wavelength or greater than 10 micrometer. Water droplets Water droplets in clouds and fog are major contributors to the scattering process, just like this. So since the all wavelengths are scattered equally, clouds generally appear white in satellite imagery. So this phenomenon can obstruct optical satellite observations used in engineering surveys and product or project monitoring. So we have the graphical representation, wavelength on x-axis, where the scattering intensity on y-axis, but with reference to that the constant wavelength integration is there with reference to constant scattering intensity of 100. Atmospheric absorption and the atmospheric windows concept, that is a graphical representation which also shows with reference to the increment or decrement. Likewise, wavelength on x-axis, where atmospheric transmission in percentage or transmittance in the percentage on y-axis. Here the atmospheric gases plays the role of absorption of electromagnetic radiation at specific wavelength regions, which reduces the amount of that radiation reaching towards the earth's surface. The important point is that for the absorption, that are the constituents which are including ozone layer, carbon dioxide and water vapor available in the atmosphere. That absorption creates unusable portions of the electromagnetic spectrum for remote sensing applications point of view. So here the engineers utilize that wavelength region with minimum absorption to obtain reliable and distinct data for infrastructural and environmental studies. There are the atmospheric windows, or we can say that the primary atmospheric absorbers. Atmospheric windows are wavelengths basically that have the intervals where electromagnetic energy passes or travels through the atmosphere with reference to the minimum absorption and scattering. Here, major windows occur in the visible spectrum, infrared, near infrared spectrum, thermal infrared spectrum, and microwave region. Means that remote sensing sensors are designed accordingly so that we can use it within this type of windows for efficient data acquisition point of view. So here sensors for that remote sensing technique must be designed to operate between these absorption bands where ozone protects the biosphere but blocks ultraviolet remote sensing radiations, whereas the water and carbon dioxide are efficient absorbers of thermal energy or the heat energy, that are the greenhouse effect. Most important concept, surface interaction, that is the conservation of energy, where interaction of electromagnetic radiation with reference to the earth surface material. It may be vegetative material, it may be soil, it may be water. Likewise, incident energy component, reflected energy component, absorbed energy component, and transmitted energy component. Four components are there. With reference to that four component, we have the equation of it. So when electromagnetic radiation reaches to the earth surface, it may be reflected, likewise, it may be absorbed this way, it may be transmitted depending on the material which is available on the earth surface along with its properties. Here, the water body is available which absorbs the most amount of incident energy, while vegetation material is available just like tree, it strongly reflects near infrared radiation. So the soil, rocks, construction materials, or many more things are available on the earth's surface. They exhibit distinct reflectance characteristics. They are also known as spectral signatures. So civil engineering point of view, we are using that spectral signature or spectral responses of each and every material which is available on the earth's surface for the land use, land cover mapping, land zoning point of view, classification point of view, geological mapping point of view, ocean study, construction material identification, and many more usage. So the total incident energy is equal to total reflected energy plus total absorbed energy plus total transmitted energy. So addition of these all is the total incident energy. Next one will be the specular versus diffuse reflection. So the two types of reflection, specular reflection and diffuse reflection. Basically, the specular reflection occurs on smooth surfaces, just shown in the image, where reflected energy travels in a single direction similar to the mirror, just like this. Incident ray and reflected ray in one single beam of incident and one single beam of reflection. But with reference to the diffuse reflection, it occurs on rough surfaces, this like this, which causing energy to scatter in multiple directions just as per the surface availability. So incident ray of beam is constant, but the reflected ray of beam is fully scattered. Likewise, we have to check the roughness threshold. So if the plane surface is there, then one way beam to one way reflection beam. But with reference to irregular roughness, then one incident beam but large amount of reflected scattered rays are seen. Likewise, most natural surfaces exhibit diffuse reflection which make them suitable for remote sensing observation. So for that remote sensing observation, we want that type, but can't we get it because earth have undulations. Likewise, we get that type of natural phenomenon. So understanding of that reflectance behavior, which helps engineers to interpret satellite images for pavement studies, reservoir planning, and urban infrastructural mapping also. The spectral characteristics of the material which is available on the earth's surface, where the materials are of the three types, we can check the incident energy with reference to it, just like soil, then water, and vegetative material. The three materials are targeted on the earth's surface with reference to its geodetic curvature, where the spectral characteristics are related to the soil point of view, where the impact of moisture is checked with reference to absorption, lowering overall reflectance point of view. So here the graphical representation, where wavelength in micrometer with reference to the reflectance in percentage on y-axis, it shows that the two graphs for wet soil and dry soil. So here the for dry soil, the wavelength as increases at the reflectance initial level, it gets increases, but at some point it gets downward. But in wet soil, there will be a continuous increment in initial phase, then a drop down. Again, there will be a increment, then again drop down. Likewise, we see why, because there will be a water absorption bands after some interval, so that the wet soil which absorbs large amount of incident energy, so that the wet moisture absorbs it and it will get dry in some time. So that this atmosphere scattering affects image brightness, contrast, and radiometric accuracy point of view, where the remotely sensed data based on some topographical conditions like soil purpose. Next one will be the spectral characteristics of water. See here the two types of water: clear water, which is the dark, and turbid water, which will be the bright. Here clear water which absorbs strongly in near infrared, which appears black in color, whereas the turbidity point of view, which is the characteristics of the water, we check the suspended sediment within that turbid water or clean water, which increases the visible reflectance. Likewise, the graphical representation with reference to clear water blue line, turbid water gray line. So wavelength is on x-axis, where percentage of reflectance on y-axis. See the clear water which have the minimum reflectance at initial level, it gets increases, but after that it goes downward side, and which is constant at some amount. With reference to that turbid water, the graph nature is likewise, but the amount of reflectance is more, so that the ocean water which may get reflected more as compared to the river water or the water which is stored in the reservoirs. Next, the spectral characteristics of the vegetative material, the graphical representation where the wavelength in the micrometer with reference to the reflectance in the percentage. See, the graph is not in straight direction, not in the increment order or not in the decrement order continuously. This is the actually zigzag nature of the graph, but the end point and the starting point is same. Why is like so? Because here the whole graph is divided into parts. Likewise, green chlorophyll point of view, then absorption point of view, then again red edge point of view, healthy green vegetation which is the cell structure scattering that nearer to the infrared, then followed by leaf water content and leaf water content at the end. Means the overall graph which is in the undulating part or in the changing phase from the vegetative material point of view, as each and every tree doesn't have the same dimension of leaves and same dimension of height also. Likewise, the spectral characteristics for that vegetative material with reference to the characteristics of leaves, characteristics of trees, and the vegetative material available on the earth surface, the spectral signature which will differ with reference to the leaf water content, green chlorophyll content, and healthy green vegetative content. So here we see the correcting scattering effects which improve feature extraction and reliability classification, where the accurate satellite images of soil, water, and vegetation which supports transportation planning, watershed management, and environmental monitoring point of view. Owing towards the civil engineering domain, the knowledge of atmospheric interactions which enables that civil engineers to make decisions using high quality and geospatial data sets for soil, water, and vegetative material. So the interaction of electromagnetic radiation with the atmosphere point of view, the earth surface governs, or the earth surface uses that quality, and the interpretation or interaction in between the rays which are emitting from the source and inciding on the geodetic curvature of the earth, where we have to understand the type of scattering, just like Rayleigh scattering, Mie scattering, or non-selective scattering, along with its reflection criteria and absorption mechanisms that civil engineers, they have to use effectively each and every satellite images with reference to the application point of view, where infrastructural planning, environmental assessment, and sustainable development will satisfactorily achieve. Stay tuned guys. Happy learning.